Pretty much every topic I cover on this channel isn't real, and I think you know that. There are no vampires, no werewolves, no elves, no fairies, no witches, at least of the bubbling cauldron casting curses variety. But sometimes something comes along that we think might be real, or at least adjacent to reality. It seems plausible enough to have existed, even if the underlying reason for it doing so didn't. You've probably seen something like this, even if only on a TV show or magazine or on the internet. It's a kit for killing vampires, and they became popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially as works of fiction like Dracula spread across the world. At least, that's what you'd probably think at first glance. That's what I thought too before I started digging into this topic. Sadly, kits like this are complete fabrications with a surprisingly recent history. I mean, they're not totally fake, but they're not exactly real either. So let's delve into the history and pseudo-history of these sort of real and sort of not real vampire killing kits. Each one of these kits is different, as you might expect, but they all tend to share some common elements. Inside a wooden box is a wide array of weapons and other paraphernalia commonly associated with vampire slayers. Of course you have stakes, and a mallet to drive them in, as well as various other weapons, such as knives and pistols. Stoppered bottles contain fluids such as holy water or substances like garlic, while some kits contain a mold for casting bullets. Silver, I presume, making the kits useful against werewolves too, I guess. Religious items, such as Bibles, rosaries, and crucifixes, are also common. The items are usually arrayed in individual compartments, because a seasoned vampire slayer can't afford the time to rummage around in an unsorted box, not when an angry bloodsucker is bearing down on him or her. The interior is often lined with a red material to complete the striking visual effect. All of the items exhibit a certain kind of weathering, making them look like era-appropriate antiques, from the time when vampire mania first swept through the public consciousness. As we'll soon see, that's sometimes true and sometimes not. Some contain written material meant to add to their authenticity. A letter found in one such kit reads, 12 October 1890. Dear Mrs. Eberhardt, I have dispatched the vampire that took your sweet daughter's life. Included in this case are the tools used in the final act, along with proof of its death. Mildred's life was too innocent to be taken by such a monster. She was dearly loved by me as we were newly betrothed. May she now rest in peace. Andrew A. Kaufman. I could keep showing you pictures of these kits for days, because there are a lot of them out there. Seriously, do a Google search for yourself and see. There's enough of them out there to make you think that vampires were so common that they must have outnumbered humans. A good number of the kits don't make any claim to authenticity and omit their modern-day props, created simply as accessories for role-playing or curiosities meant for display. But that isn't always the case, and sometimes even well-intentioned history buffs get it wrong. I do most of my research over the internet, which, as anyone knows, is rife with dubious claims. Most of the time I'm able to find multiple sources for my information, or at the very least can find information from a reputable source, such as scholarly papers, museums, universities, and the like. This topic, however, seems to run afoul of more random blog posts and semi-mythical hoo-ha than just about anything I've ever looked up before. If you dabble a little bit, you'll find plenty of pages that claim vampire hunting kits really were created and in use a little over 100 years ago. Some are obvious fiction and aren't trying to mask it, while others come from sites that have some legitimate, if clickbaity, historical content. And some kits are worth big money, regardless of how authentic they truly are. In June of 2022, a kit purportedly belonging to William Malcolm Haley, a British baron, was sold by Hanson's Auctioneers for £13,000. It was expected to sell for $2,000 or $3,000. Several of the items were stamped with Haley's initials, and the kit contained paperwork from the Metropolitan Police from 1915 referring to an alien enemy. However, there doesn't appear to be any evidence that Haley himself ever owned the kit, or even if he had any particularly strong beliefs regarding vampires. Another kit, sold by Sotheby's auction house in 2004 for $26,400, contained items purportedly manufactured by a gunsmith named Nicholas Plumdur and was assembled by Professor Ernst von Berg. A great number of kits are attributed to the work of these two men, whom we'll get back to later. Sotheby's also sold the Blomberg kit in 2012 for $13,750 and an unattributed kit for $25,000 in 2011. So, did Hanson's and Sotheby's cheat their buyers by selling them fake kits? Maybe, and maybe not. Like many of the myths I talk about in this channel, there's usually a smidge of truth in them. Probably the world's foremost expert on vampire killing kits, which is a heck of a thing to put on one's resume, is Jonathan Ferguson, keeper of firearms and artillery at the Royal Armouries in Leeds. The museum acquired a kit in 2012, which Ferguson immediately got to work analyzing. The kit contained all the usual bits: stakes, pistol, mallet, a crucifix, rosary, prayer book, bottles of various substances, and at first glance it might appear to be over 100 years old. It's possible that some of the elements are, and that's the rub when it comes to kits like this. Some kits contain genuine antiques, items from the 19th or early 20th century. The kit's prayer book, Ferguson said, is from 1851, which could be easily enough verified by looking at its publication date. Many of the other objects, he believes, are also from approximately the right era. So is the kit real? Was it actually put together 100 or more years ago to serve as a repository of weapons to use against vampires? Well, according to Ferguson, to answer this question, I completed a thorough survey of vampire slaying in both folklore and fiction. In the process, it became clear that kits like R1 could not have existed until the era of Hammer horror films in the 1950s to 70s. Our kit is inspired by the movies, not Victorian stories and folklore. One creative sort, who goes by the name Darth Saber, talked at length about how he put his kit together. Unfortunately, the pictures he posted are long gone, but here's a list of components. A $30 suitcase from Michaels, rosary, dagger, and syringe purchased from eBay, an old mallet purchased from a junk shop, stakes made from wooden rods he bought from a Home Depot, stained and sealed with polyurethane to make them look like antiques, and two era-appropriate items, an 1849 Colt pistol and a Bible from the 1870s. He didn't say where the bottles came from, but the overall ingredient list proves that many so-called antique kits can easily be made from modern materials. The Darth Saber thread includes a comment linking to an archived thread on a different message board from 2005, where one man claimed to have created the first vampire killing kit. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of dubious information out there regarding these kits, and what I'm about to say is probably completely fabricated, so take it with all the grains of garlic salt you want. I'm just including it to give you an idea of how seemingly plausible theories regarding these kits can be rife with inaccuracies, once you take a closer look. The man's name is Michael De Winter, and he went into great detail regarding the original kit he made in the early 1970s, which at least tracks with Ferguson's assumed date for the earliest vampire killing kits. He said he showed the kit to a famous actor known for his, quote, hammy horror roles, which could be a reference to Hammer films and someone like Christopher Lee. Notably, De Winter said that he created the names of Professor Ernst Blomberg and the gunsmith Nicholas Plomdur, who have graced many kits since. Here he's telling an easily disproved lie, which casts his entire story into doubt. Professor Blomberg really did exist, studying psychiatric cases where people believe they are vampires or werewolves in the late 1800s, making him an obvious choice as the fictional constructor of monster-slaying kits. At least, that's the story passed around on everything from random blogs to Wikipedia. I can't find incontrovertible proof that Blomberg studied those topics. A scan of a page from one of his supposed treatises on clinical vampirism is described as part of an elaborate hoax by one researcher, and I'm inclined to agree. Plomdur also appears to have been a real gunsmith from Belgium, but there's no indication he had anything to do with Blomberg or any vampire killing kit. According to one myth, Blomberg himself used one of Plomdur's pistols to slay Jack the Ripper in 1888. Decades later, the gun found its way into the hands of a German soldier, who used it to kill the Führer in his bunker. That should give you an idea of how deep you're wading when you get into this topic. It's unlikely we'll ever get a full and verifiable account regarding these kits, but as you can see, vampire killing kits and the stories concerning them can contain some elements of truth, including individual items that are bona fide antiques, even if they're assembling into museum-worthy kits as a fully modern invention. And if you think about it, that actually makes sense. The year is 1898. You, a scholarly fellow who knows much about the occult and the creatures that haunt the night, have decided to ply your trade as a slayer of monsters, most notably vampires. Of course, the biggest problem is that these things don't really exist. All the weapons and holy water in the world can't do much against superstition. An enterprising adventurer might seek to travel from village to village, hoping to find enough rubes to coax money out of as he solved their vampire problems. It wouldn't be that far removed from the patent medicine quackery of the same era. Unlike people's needs for medical help or hopes for miracle cures, such cases would be few and far between, and the expense of building and maintaining a kit, not to mention travel costs, most of which would be in the pursuit of rumors and hearsay, would make such an occupation rather unappealing. Chances are, an erstwhile 19th century monster slayer would go bankrupt rather quickly, and that's the best case scenario. Check out my video about a sorcerer who was hired by some villagers to kill the King of England, to see how badly things turned out for him. When I started research on this topic, I looked to see if anyone fit the bill. A real-life Abraham Van Helsing, perhaps. A man who traveled the countryside in search of monsters to slay, even if he did so as a charlatan. I couldn't find a single one. The closest I got were writings by men who advised how to deal with vampires and other such creatures, and individual persons or communities that took singular action to deal with a local threat. Eastern European folklore also offers us some legendary tales of such people, such as the Croatian Krsnik, who shapeshifts into an animal at night to battle vampires and other monsters, but there are no definitive records of individual vampire hunters, and they probably wouldn't have used Victorian-era style kits in any case. In the same way that movie ninjas dress in all black, or overly dramatic villains rig the hero up in elaborate death traps while they explain their schemes, vampire hunters, and the kits they purportedly used, are more firmly rooted in the entertainment world than in the real world. They exist simply because they're cool, and in some cases can be worth a lot of money. I know that comes as a disappointment to many, myself included, but we can still marvel at the ingenuity of these kits. As Jonathan Ferguson put it, they're not actually fakes, because there's nothing that they're fakes of. They're as authentic as you'd like them to be, and if you want to think of them as historical curiosities or objects of art, there's nothing stopping you from doing so. I just don't think I'd drop 25 grand on one. Thank you so much for watching my video about the dubious origins of vampire killing kits. This one took a while to sort through with all the information and misinformation out there. I like to think I did a pretty good job presenting it all, but if there's something you think should be added or changed, let me know in the comments. Just be sure to check your sources before posting. And remember, garlic is useless against Italian vampires. They love this stuff.